Couple of important developments while we await the results of the Hungarian elections. Mr. Netanyahu is busy destroying entire villages in southern Lebanon. Rights groups are calling it domicide, which was trialed in Gaza. So they're completely erasing any trace of Lebanese life in frontline villages. So much so that people are trying to Google the names of those villages, and they are seeing that they have disappeared from the maps. Mr. Netanyahu today has asked the court to delay his trial because he's asked his security services to provide an affidavit to the court to say that because of security reasons, Mr. Netanyahu cannot be in one place for an extended amount of time, i.e. in court. So perhaps the court should move to where Mr. Netanyahu is, in a secure bunker or wherever he hangs out. But anyway, this is what they are putting forward. So desperate to avoid corruption and bribery charges. While it is too dangerous for him to be in court, it seems that he had no problem stepping inside southern Lebanon. He's very proudly telling us that he entered southern Lebanon as like I said, the head of the Mongol horde, Halaku Khan, his conquest in southern Lebanon. This is what the world is allowing this genocidal maniac to get away with. But here we are. So that is what is happening. In addition, the IDF today, with its tanks, rammed United Nations peacekeeping vehicles. Not only that, but they also destroyed cameras and threatened the peacekeepers. This is a bunch of folks who commit genocide, commit rape, commit theft. They do not follow the laws of war. They do not follow the Geneva Conventions. They are subject to no laws whatsoever. Barbarism is not a bug. It is a feature of the IDF. Those are the orders they're given. They're given free rein to do whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want. That is what is going on. So, while J.D. Vance was speaking from the podium saying that no deal had been reached, what was Mr. Trump doing? The New York Times published a startling picture of what was going on here in the US while J.D. Vance was telling us that he had failed to reach a deal with the Iranians. And I quote, this is an article by Katie Rogers published on April 11th. On Saturday evening, as Vice President J.D. Vance took a podium in Pakistan and said no deal had been reached to end the war in Iran, President Trump was in Miami watching a mixed martial arts fight. Mr. Trump spent several hours orbited by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a few of his children, some Ultimate Fighting Championship officials, Sergio Gore, the U.S. ambassador to India, the recording artist Vanilla Ice, Dan Bongino, the former deputy director of the FBI, and the manosphere shepherd Joe Rogan. He was surrounded by people, but Mr. Trump was somehow an isolated figure. People mostly circulated around him, checking in with updates and then leaving again. For the most part, Mr. Trump sat and impassively watched blood and saliva sprayed out from the fighters beating each other silly in front of him. What a commentary on America today. What a commentary on the stature of America. This is what is going on. On top of that, what she didn't write about was Mr. Trump going up to one of the UFC fighters, holding his hand and saying, "You're so good looking. I can't believe you're fighting. You should be a model." Yup. The guy, this big burly guy, looked embarrassed. Yeah. That's what the President of the United States was doing. Kind of creepy, kind of slimy? Yes. Well, something else that's going on right now is that the Catholic Church seems to be coming out swinging against the Trump administration. I think the Pope is fed up of the Crusader talk, the use of Jesus Christ as their weapon, it almost seems. The Pope has consistently said that Jesus would not want this war, and he's also seeing a religious war being evoked and invoked. I think what is coming out of the mouth of Pete Hegseth has really angered the Pope, and probably the summoning of the ambassador to the Holy See and being talked down to, and the Avignon papacy being mentioned, I think that was probably the last straw. So the Pope is really, really coming out swinging and calling this an immoral war. And it seems that his close ally, Cardinal Robert McElroy, gave a homily in Washington where he called upon Catholics to take up some civic actions to end the immoral war against Iran. So let me play that for you. It's worth listening to.
And when we leave this church this night, we must move beyond prayer. As citizens and believers in this democracy that we cherish so deeply, we must advocate for peace with our representatives and leaders. It is not enough to say we have prayed. We must also act. For it is very possible that the negotiations will fail because of recalcitrance on one or both sides. And our president will move to re-enter this immoral war. At that critical juncture, as disciples of Jesus Christ, called to be peacemakers in the world, we must answer vocally and in unison, no, not in our name, not at this moment, not with our country.
He got a standing ovation. There is this is extraordinary, actually, quite extraordinary. There is a tradition in the Catholic Church to fight against tyranny and to fight against human rights violations. And all over Latin America, that tradition was followed during the time of the juntas, where the Catholic Church and the Catholic priests actually took on the fight for human rights and dignity and the end to the terror that was being caused by the juntas. It also happened in the Philippines, where which is a majority Catholic country, where many of the priests started to support those who were fighting against tyranny and autocracy and were speaking out for human rights. And many of these priests and nuns were actually gunned down, tortured, buried in mass graves in Honduras and in Guatemala. I think in Guatemala, a very, very famous archbishop was killed, assassinated. And there was a famous book written about the art of, I think it was called The Art of the Murder. And it was about the archbishop who was murdered by the paramilitaries in Guatemala because he had spoken out against what the paramilitaries had been doing, and all the mass graves that were turning up everywhere, and how the entire system sort of collaborated to obfuscate and to hide why he had been murdered and what had been going on in Guatemala. So there is a tradition in the church to be front and center in fighting tyranny and autocracy. It wasn't fully supported, I think, by the Vatican, so they were kind of rebels in the system, but it seems to me that the Vatican this time around is actually leading the charge, and perhaps having an American Pope is making a big difference. And I think because he is American, he fully understands what is going on in America and what is being eroded and what America could look like, and in turn what the world could look like if they get away with this. And also from his religious point of view, that there is a religious war which is being invoked by the Secretary of, as I call, War and Death, who is full of crusader tattoos and continues to use the name of Jesus Christ to justify death and destruction all day long. And he says that our troops are fighting for Jesus Christ. So I think very interesting what the Vatican is saying, what the Pope is saying, and what his allies in the church are saying. So I would spend some time looking at that. Today, NPR has done a story about how U.S. troops are feeling in droves. They are calling hotlines related to how to actually leave the military, because so many of them are feeling that they do not want to fight for Israel. This is remarkable because this NPR story comes on the heels of what I had talked about a while ago, where a HuffPost journalist, Akbar Shahid Ahmed, had written about the discomfort in the military among soldiers who did not want to fight for Israel. And the Iran war has absolutely made these soldiers feel like, what are we dying for? What are we fighting for? And NPR today has done a story about how the hotline that supports these soldiers is getting a huge number of calls from soldiers who want to leave the military and are becoming conscientious objectors because they do not want to fight this war in Iran on behalf of Israel. This is all really extraordinary, really extraordinary. So this is what is going on. Let us see what are the results coming out of Hungary. So very few, it's only about 29% that has been reported so far, but the opposition party of Magyar, TISA has 56.6%, while Orban has 41.3%. The projected seats that are being projected for the opposition is 132 seats for TISA, and for Fidesz 59 seats. To get a supermajority, Magyar needs 133 seats. So he's 1 seat away from a supermajority as is being projected. We don't have the exact results except for almost 30% of the voting. So everybody keep your eye on the Hungarian election, because as I said, it is material for the well-being of all of us at this point. So we'll keep you posted on how this all plays out.